Welcome once again to another episode of The Locker Room, where the BS stops and the real decisions are made. I am one of your hosts, Kyle Anderson. Joining me as always, three of the best men in the business. To my left,
it's Brandon Jones,
Reggie Huffman,
Matt Hirsch.
And tonight we got a real interesting topic for you. Yes, conference realignment. If we haven't talked about it enough, we're going to talk about it some more. The big question, as everyone knows, Florida State was announcing earlier this week that they may be leaving the ACC. Turns out that's not true. Now also, there's other big news, not only just in Division I, but Division One.wmv and in the SWAC. Could be some traditional powers leaving there to come to Conference USA. But what we're going to do, we're going to dive right in. Guys, here's the big question. Everybody's talking about conference realignment. Everybody's moving. We'll go to Brandon, you first. Is it helping or is it hurting?
In my opinion, it's hurting. Anytime you don't get that Oklahoma-Nebraska matchup anymore, you don't get that Texas A&M matchup anymore, you don't get that Missouri-Kansas matchup in basketball and football, that border war. I mean, it's hurting. I mean, I understand it's all about the money, this and the other, but damn, what about tradition? So, in my opinion, it's hurting.
Reggie, is it hurting or helping?
You know, I kind of think, not a real big football guy, but on the, so I have a really objective, standpoint here. I actually kind of think it's helping from a standpoint of, you're kind of letting new fish in the sea, if you will. It's a situation where a lot of these schools, like the Boise States and the TCUs, a lot of these schools who, has never been an Oklahoma, has never been a powerhouse, they are now getting an opportunity to get their feet wet, and it is kind of shaking the ground a little bit. So I actually think, it's helping. It's just it's something that's always going to be evolving from now. So I think.
Matt, do you think it's helping or hurting?
I think it could have helped. I think that it could have helped. It could have strengthened a lot of regional powers. But I think overall, the way it's been done so far is it's hurting. The fact that it's been all about the money, it's really hurting. It doesn't make sense. West Virginia ending up in the Big 12 makes absolutely no sense to me. Some of the ways that it works out, I think TCU ending up in the Big 12 makes a lot of sense. But I think it hurts overall because it just doesn't make sense. And then, aside from college football, I think it hurts a lot of other sports. I think like what Brandon was hitting on with the Missouris and Kansases of the world, boy, it kills their basketball. It kills, different other sports. And, Reggie, you might be able to kind of to think about that a little bit with your basketball background. Is that something that really could probably hurt college basketball? Even though it might help football, I guess.
It definitely would affect college basketball. A lot of times we just don't know how these things are going to look until they actually play out. There's so much speculation, well, this and that is not good for tradition. It's all about the money. I think this is one of those things we're just going to have to see how it plays out. I think we could very well be in for a surprise. So I'm just kind of looking back at it from a very objective standpoint. Well, let's just see how this goes.
Well, and to build off what you said and to build off what Matt said and Brandon, you may miss the matchups, but think about it. What's to say that because Missouri is going to the SEC, why can't they play Kansas anymore? I mean, we've already said there's 4 teams in the SEC that play their rivals are out of conference.
But, Kyle, you miss out on, even if they're not necessarily playing them, it hurts the overall rivalry. It'd be like saying, it would almost be bad if Auburn moved to the SEC East, because then you have the competition between Alabama and Auburn on who's going to win their division. Who's going to actually finish out on top, not just who wins the game. And I think that really affects that facet of these rivalries.
Man, I think basketball has gotten the shaft, especially when you talk about the Big East. The Big East to college basketball was what the SEC was to football.
Well, it's all about the money. That's the problem. Is football's the big money maker, and the fact that these realignments have happened because of money and not because of what makes sense.
And to build off that, Reggie, this is in your court because the ACC looks like with their new deal is now saying, hey, we don't really care about football anymore. Basketball is where we're going to be. We're making that the Tier 1 sport. Do you think with Syracuse and Pitt coming to the ACC now, does that help them in basketball, or does that hurt the conference and hurt some of the rivalries?
Well, for the ACC, I think it helps them in basketball. I think bringing two powerhouse, teams to Syracuse and Pitt, it makes it exciting. The ACC, they've always really been a pretty strong, conference when it comes to basketball. But adding those two teams definitely, is a nice steroid injection into the whole equation. So I actually think it helps. But on the flip side, as Brandon kind of mentioned, you have the other conferences like the Big East. They just basically got a bad check on this whole deal. So, a conference that used to be strong, it's now we're rebuilding again. It's just the way it is.
Now I'm going to read you guys some of the quotes that some of our fans have been saying. Stephen Till, he said the same thing that Brandon has said. Reggie, you've said it. Matt, you've said it. He's not a fan of it. He understands why, but he just thinks it makes no sense geographically. David Croswell Jr. basically said he figures it's inevitable because he feels like FBS is going towards the way of a playoff. Jared Franklin, same thing. He likes the idea of maybe the SEC bringing in Virginia Tech or Florida State or Clemson and possibly going to a 16-team conference. Here's my question, though. Brandon dropped a bombshell on us a couple days ago talking about how there are 4 or even more traditional powers in the SWAC and that may be jumping to go to Conference USA. I mean, what's the latest with that?
Last talk, it's kind of like in Jackson State's court, which doesn't look like it's going to happen. Bama State was kind of hesitant because of the rivalry with Alabama A&M and Tuskegee, so they were kind of hesitant. So it looks like all of them will be holding firm, and because of that, the SWAC looks like they're going to pony up and go after Tennessee State and possibly FAMU.
Now, do you think that's fair that they're going to say, hey, we have a chance to possibly jump up and make more money, but we're going to stay because, this other team that we play on a regular basis, it won't help?
I think from the standpoint of, this has come up, I know at Southern a few times. With Southern, with a lot of our traditional rivals being in the SWAC, and just knowing what those games mean to alumni 30, 40, 50, 60 years going back, I understand, but I think that the biggest thing is conference expansion at every level looks like it's about to go down. I just saw today where the CAA are looking at a few Division II teams to jump to Division I AA and Division I basketball, to fill their conference because Old Dominion is going to Conference USA and UNC Charlotte's going to Conference USA.
Don't forget VCU actually went to the Atlantic 10, so the CAA is decimated.
Yeah.
Now, when people jump conferences, we've all said that it hurts the rivalries. Good example, Penn State doesn't play Pitt anymore because Joe Paterno wanted them to come to the Big Ten. They said no. He said, hey, I'm not playing you anymore. That so much wasn't an issue of, well, you're going to another conference, we can't play each other. That was where egos got in the way and said, look, you didn't do what I want, so forget you, I'm not going to play you. But even when Arkansas and South Carolina came to the SEC, look at the rivalries they have now with Arkansas with LSU, South Carolina with Tennessee and Florida.
Now, I think that you're overhyping that Arkansas-LSU rivalry. I think that they put a trophy to it to call it a rivalry because there's no natural rival within those states. I don't think it's as big a rivalry as people play it out to be. I've talked to fans of Arkansas and LSU, and they go, not that big a rival. It's really not. LSU fans would rather play
Texas,
Alabama.
Texas A&M,
Alabama, Ole Miss. LSU Ole Miss is a huge rivalry. People don't realize that. Arkansas would rather play Texas. Texas A&M coming to the SEC will probably help because I think that is a big rivalry. But that's not a rivalry, guys.
Well, and remember, Ole Miss and LSU really hasn't been a rivalry. When you beat the other team a lot, it's not really a rivalry. So that's the way I look at it. But you bring up a good point. A&M coming, that helps the SEC. So where does it start hurting the conferences and the teams?
I think where it starts to hurt, you look at the standpoint of, we're talking about rivalries, Oklahoma, Nebraska. Just to think, how long will we have to wait to see another one of those matchups? Or even Texas A&M. And I know that one's all about ego. That one was all about somebody going out and having an ego trip. Oh, so you're going to leave? Well, we're not going to play you. But, that's where it starts to hurt.
Well, and, it's kind of where did the dominoes start to fall? That Oklahoma-Nebraska rivalry. that's one that's from conference realignment back in the 90s.
90s, yep.
You know, that's where, well, we're going to put y'all in different divisions. That's where that one really started to hurt because they never played every year, and that killed that rivalry. And that makes me very sad. I'd like to see that game more regularly, but it might never happen again.
Well, you know, I think it's a situation. You got a lot of people who are, you know, just kind of sore about this whole issue. What's going to happen here as time passes? You're just going to see new rivalries. Let's just put it out there. As time, like you said, back in the 90s, it was 2012 now. We're just going to eventually see new rivalries start to take place. So it's you know, there's an exciting angle to it as well. You know, it's.
Well, now, Reggie, you play basketball at UAB. Now Memphis is supposed to be leaving Conference USA to go to the Big East. I mean, could there not be a way that they could still play each other? Or you've experienced that rivalry. Do you think them leaving, does that really hurt it?
Unfortunately, you know, the rivalry does more for UAB than Memphis. And as you stated, you know, when you're getting beat 90% of the time, you know, how much of a rivalry is it? I'm just, you know, being very honest there. You know, I'm the biggest UAB fan as anyone. But the fact of the matter is, you know, if you're getting, you know, tired, beat down every time you guys play these guys, then is it really a rivalry? And what needs to be done to, you know, what's in the best interest of the conference? Now, Memphis leaving, it hurts. I'll be honest with you, it really hurts because Memphis is a very good program. So, you know, we hate to see that happen, but as always, you know, things will always form into something new that we didn't expect as well. So maybe there's a new rivalry that'll come out of this.
Well, and you know, the old could be made new again with that particular situation because you know, Memphis will be reunited with Louisville.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fun rivalry. It could be an even better rivalry in the Big East. So that's one I guess could lead to that.
And that's the point that I want to get to. Louisville, Cincinnati, and South Florida. All these schools started out in a smaller conference, so they jumped to go to a bigger conference. Is that bad? Isn't that what we want, is to see teams get better and move up the ladder, and if you're not good enough, then you move back down like Temple, leaving the Big East to go to wherever they're at now. Mm-hmm. But, you know, if you think about it, Louisville going from Conference USA to the Big East, that
major upgrade.
Yeah.
Are they chasing big schools off? Or big schools going, we don't want to really mess with these tiny schools because that leads to Syracuse and Pitt going to the ACC. Well, we don't want to deal with this.
It's kind of like when you see that nice girl across the street and she has on that blue dress and high heels, and you go, damn, I got to get across the street. And when you get over there, it ain't what you thought it was. Louisville in the Big East.
Remember, like they always say, guys, you never know what you're going to get. And as my grandfather always said, the grass is always greener on the other side till you find out somebody spray painted the cow crap green. That's just the way it is. Well, guys, great part. You make sure everybody, you got to tune in for part 2 because we're going to get into how's the media playing with this, what's the future of all of this, and Reggie's going to do the Dougie, and Brandon's going to play the accordion.
Yes,
We're just kidding. Brandon can't play the accordion.
No.